Let's make the anatomy easy. Today we will discuss the upper limb main bone, which is called humerus bone. Today we will discuss in detail the anatomy of the humerus bone. First of all, the humerus bone is consisted of two ends, this upper end and this lower end, and this body which is called shaft of the bone. The upper end is actually consisted of a head of humerus, and this region is actually called the neck, and this is called anatomical neck. We have another constriction region. This is called surgical neck of the head of humerus. Similarly, we have two tubercles. This one is called greater tubercle, and this one is called lesser tubercle. On the other side, if we have on the anterior side, this tubercle will be the greater tubercle, and this one will be the lesser tubercle. In between these two tubercles, we have a groove, or we have a sulcus, this region, which is actually called intertubercular groove or intertubercular sulcus. Okay. Similarly, after the upper end, now we have the lower end. The lower end is actually consisted of capitulum. This is actually capitulum, which articulate with the head of the radius bone to form elbow joint. And we have this trochlea. The trochlea actually articulate with the trochleal notch of the ulna bone, and this also form the part of the elbow joint. So the lower end articulates with the radius bone and ulna bone by the capitulum and trochlea, and form the hang joint, which is actually called elbow joint. Similarly, we have two epicondyles on the lower end. This epicondyle is called medial epicondyle, as it is on the medial line, it is on the medial side, and this epicondyle, which is on the side of the radius, it is called lateral epicondyle. This ridges which leads to the epicondyle, which runs down to the epicondyle, are actually called supracondylar ridges. The ridge which is on the lateral side will be called lateral supracondylar ridge, and the ridge which is on the medial side will be called medial supracondylar ridge. Similarly, we have three fossas. This fossa is called coronoid fossa, this fossa is called radial fossa, and on the posterior side we have another fossa. This fossa is actually called here olecranian fossa. So we have three fossas: olecranian fossa, this coronoid fossa, and this radial fossa. These are the three fossas. And similarly, the coronoid fossa is for the coronoid process of the ulna, and this olecranian fossa is for the olecranian of the ulna. Now let's talk about the articulation. Actually, the upper end articulates with the shoulder, with the bone of the shoulder girdle, which is called scapula bone. It articulates with the scapula bone, and this is actually with the glenoid cavity of the scapula bone. The head of the humerus articulate with the glenoid cavity of the scapula bone and form ball and socket synovial joint. This process is called coracoid process, and this is called acromion. This is called acromion process, and this is called coronoid process. Here we have another shoulder bone, which is called clavicle. this clavicle form a joint with the acromion, which is called acromioclavicular joint. And similarly, this clavicle also form a joint here with the sternum, which is called sternoclavicular joint, but we will discuss it later. So we are discussing the humerus, and its head capitulate with the glenoid cavity of the scapula bone. This is the upper end, and the lower end capitulate with the radius through capitulum and with the ulna through trochlea of the humerus bone. Here at the capitulum, it forms the part of the elbow joint with the head of the radius bone, and here at the trochlea, it forms the part of the elbow joint with the trochlear notch of the ulna bone. So this was all about the articulate surfaces. Now let's move to the muscles of this humerus bone. The upper end of humerus bone form 7 insertions. The 3 insertions are attached to the greater tuberosity, this greater tuberosity, and the rest one is attached to the lesser tuberosity, and then we have the 3 insertions attached to the bicipital groove. We will discuss them number wise. First of all, the 3 insertions that are attached to the greater tuberosity. One is supraspinatus. This is actually the supraspinatus. This is the insertion which is attached to the greater tuberosity. And similarly, we have another one which is called infraspinatus. This is actually infraspinatus. These blue color show the insertions. So this is infraspinatus, which is attached to the greater tuberosity, and the third one is teres minor. This is the teres minor. This insertion is also attached to the greater tuberosity. Then we will discuss the one which is attached to the lesser tuberosity. It is subscapularis. This is actually the subscapularis. This is the insertion that is attached to the lesser tuberosity. Now we will move to the 3 insertions that are attached to the bicipital groove. The first one is pectoralis major. This is pectoralis major, and this is actually attached. This pectoralis major is attached to which lip? It is actually attached to the lateral lip. It is attached to the lateral lip of the bicipital groove. This region is the bicipital groove, and it is attached to the lateral lip. So it is pectoralis major insertion. And the second one is teres major. This is the teres major. It is attached to the medial lip. Here it is attached to which lip? It is attached to the lip which is medial. So it is attached to the medial lip of the bicipital groove, and the one which is attached to the floor of the bicipital groove, it will be which one? It will be latissimus dorsi. This is latissimus dorsi. So we have 3 insertions that are attached to the bicipital groove. First one is pectoralis major, second one is teres major, and the third one is latissimus dorsi. Then we have 2 insertions which are attached to the shaft. This region is the shaft region. So here we have 2 insertions. One is called deltoid insertion, which is actually attached, which is actually located as the deltoid tuberosity. Here we have deltoid tuberosity, and this insertion is called deltoid insertion. And the second one of the shaft is known as coracobrachialis. This is coracobrachialis, and this coracobrachialis is actually attached to the medial border of the shaft. This is attached to the medial border of the shaft. These are the two insertions of the shaft. Now we will move towards the origins. We will discuss. We have three insertions which are attached to the surfaces. We have three origins which are attached to the surfaces. These red colors show the origins. The first one is attached to the anterior surface, that is brachialis. This is brachialis, it is attached to the anterior surface. The second one, which is attached to the which is attached to the spiral groove, but it is attached to the posterior surface above the spiral groove. It is lateral tricep. This is the head of the lateral tricep. This is attached to the which surface? This is attached to the posterior surface, but it is attached to posterior surface above the spiral groove. Here we have the spiral groove, and this is above the spiral groove and attached to the posterior surface. This was the second origin which is attached to the surface. The third one is tricep medial head, which is actually attached to the surface below the spiral groove. Here was the spiral groove, so this is the surface below the spiral groove. These are the three origins which are attached to the surfaces. Now we will discuss the origins from the borders. The first one is pronator teres. This is actually pronator teres. This is the first one, which is actually attached to the medial supracondylar ridge. This region was actually medial supracondylar ridge, and this is actually attached to the medial supracondylar ridge, and this is called pronator teres. The second one is brachioradialis. Brachioradialis, we have this brachioradialis, which is actually attached to the lateral supracondylar ridge. This is actually to the lateral supracondylar ridge, brachioradialis. And the third one is extensor carpi radius longus. Extensor carpi radius longus. This is also attached to the lateral surface of the condylar ridge. This is the lateral condylar ridge. So these are the three origins from the borders, and the above are the three origins from the surfaces. Then we will move towards the nerves that are attached, that are associated with the humerus. The nerve that is actually around the surgical neck, here is the surgical neck, and this nerve which is around the surgical neck, it is called axillary nerve. If this nerve is injured due to any fracture, due to the fracture in the neck region, then it will cause the paralysis of the deltoid muscle and the shoulder. So the injury of this axillary nerve due to fracture may cause the paralysis of the deltoid muscle and also the shoulder. Secondly, we have another nerve which is called radial nerve. This radial nerve is present in the radial groove or spiral groove. This is radial groove, this region, this, and or it is also called spiral groove. So the nerve that is around this radial region, it is called a radial nerve. So due to bone fracture, if the radial nerve is injured, it will cause the paralysis of the extensors of wrist and finger. So the extensors of the wrist and fingers will be paralyzed due to the injury of the radial nerve. The third nerve is on the medial epicondyle. This around the medial or behind the medial epicondyle, this nerve is actually called ulnar nerve. So if due to bone fracture the ulnar nerve got injured, then it will cause the paralysis of the ulnar nerve, and similarly it will cause partial clue hand. So this was all about the humerus bone. If you have any query or confusion, you can ask in the comment section. Thank you for watching this video.